My parents and sister kicked me off a cruise I paid for, then charged $5,800 to my card. Now they're being evicted. On a Caribbean cruise, my parents declared, "We've booked your ferry home. We'll sail on without you." My sister smirked. Her husband called me cheap, so I walked away. 3 days later, karma hit hard. I had been dreaming of this moment for months. After landing a promotion at my tech firm, I'd splurged on a Caribbean cruise for my family. A rare chance to trade our usual holiday squabbles for turquoise waves and steel drum beats. I'd shelled out 60% of the cost myself. Spacious cabins, snorkeling trips, even a gourmet dining package. The rest I'd split between my parents, my older sister Mara, Mara's husband Jason, and our soft-spoken Uncle Carl. It wasn't cheap, nearly $8,000 from my savings, but I figured it was worth it to see everyone smiling for once. The ship gleamed under the Miami sun as we boarded a floating palace of glass and white steel. I inhaled the salty air, picturing lazy days by the pool and nights under the stars. I'd always been the peacemaker, the one smoothing over my parents' sharp edges or Mara's endless need to one-up me. This trip, I thought, would be different. A fresh start, but the cracks showed fast. At the welcome buffet, my parents speared a shrimp and said, "Well, Daniel, this must feel good." Showing off that fancy new paycheck. Their tone was light, but their eyes glinted with something sour. Mara smirked, piling her plate high while Jason chimed in. "Yeah. Mr. Big Shot. Footing the bill like a champ." I brushed it off with a laugh, chalking it up to their usual teasing. Uncle Carl just sipped his iced tea, watching quietly from the sidelines. By evening, as the ship pulled away from shore, I stood on deck, the horizon stretching endless and golden. I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this could work. Maybe they'd finally see me as more than just the family ATM. I had no idea how wrong I was. The first full day on the cruise started with promise, sunlight glinting off the waves, a warm breeze rustling the deck chairs. I stretched out by the pool, sipping a mango smoothie, determined to soak in every second of this escape, but the peace didn't last. At dinner that night in the ship's upscale steakhouse, the mood shifted. Mara and Jason ordered a round of top-shelf whiskey and an extra platter of lobster tails, grinning like kids raiding a candy store. When the waiter set the bill down, a hefty $320, Mara slid it toward me with a lazy shrug. "You've got this, right bro? You're the one with the fat bonus." My grip tightened on my fork. I paid for most of the trip already. We agreed to split the extras. My voice was steady, but inside irritation simmered. Jason rolled his eyes. "God, Daniel, don't be so uptight. It's just money." My parents, slicing into their steak, added, "He's always been particular like that. You'd think he'd loosen up with all he's got now." The table laughed except for Uncle Carl, who kept his gaze on his plate, lips pressed thin. The next morning, it got worse. Mara and Jason strutted back from the ship's excursion desk bragging about booking a private yacht tour. $600 for the pair. "Put it on the family tab," Mara said, clapping my shoulder. "You're the anchor here, man." My jaw clenched. "There's no family tab. You pay your own way." Mara scoffed. "What's the big deal? You're loaded now." My parents overheard from their lounge chairs and called over loud enough for nearby passengers to turn. "Daniel, stop being so stingy. It's embarrassing." By lunch, the jabs had sharpened. Jason accidentally spilled his cocktail on my shirt, giggling, "Oops. Guess you can afford a new one." My parents muttered to a waiter about their cheap son who couldn't treat his family right. Their voice carrying across the deck, I caught the pitying glances from strangers and felt my face burn, not with shame, but with a slow boiling anger. I'd dropped thousands to make this trip happen, and they were painting me as the villain for setting boundaries. That afternoon, I retreated to the ship's library, needing space. Uncle Carl found me there, sliding into the seat across from me. "They're testing you," he said quietly, his gray eyes sharp. "Always have." I nodded, staring out at the endless blue. "I thought this would bring us closer." Carl's smile was small, knowing. "Money doesn't fix greed, kid." His words stuck with me, a quiet warning. I didn't know it yet, but the real storm was still brewing, and it wasn't the weather. By the third morning, the Caribbean sun couldn't warm the chill settling over me. I'd woken early, hoping a quiet breakfast might reset the trip's sour tone. The dining room buzzed with chatter, the scent of fresh coffee and pastries filling the air. I grabbed a table near the window, watching the waves roll toward a distant island. For a fleeting moment, I let myself believe the worst was behind me. Then my family arrived. My parents marched in first, their purses slung over their shoulders like general sashes. Mara and Jason trailed behind, whispering and smirking, while Uncle Carl brought up the rear, his expression unreadable. They slid into the booth, and I braced myself for more barbs about money. I didn't expect what came next. My parents set their coffee down with a deliberate clink, cleared their throats, and fixed me with a smile that didn't reach their eyes. "Daniel," they said, loud enough for nearby tables to glance over. We've made a decision. You're getting off at the next port. We've booked you a ferry back to the mainland. The words hit like a slap. I blinked, fork halfway to my mouth, waiting for the punchline. None came. Mara leaned back, arms crossed, a grin tugging at her lips. Yeah, bro. You're kinda killing the vibe. No offense. Jason nodded, popping a grape into his mouth. It's just easier without all your rules. My parents folded their hands, their tone dripping with false concern. We're here to relax, honey, and you're making it tense. This is for the family's sake. Uncle Carl shifted in his seat, his fingers tightening around his mug, but he didn't speak. My chest tightened, a mix of disbelief and betrayal clawing up my throat. I'd paid for 60% of this floating paradise. Cabins, food, the works, and now they were tossing me overboard like excess baggage. You're serious? I managed, voice low. My parents' smile widened, a glint of triumph in it. The ferry leaves at noon. We've already told the staff to have your bags ready. The table fell silent. The clatter of dishes around us suddenly deafening. My mind raced. Every dollar I'd spent, every snide remark I'd swallowed, all leading to this. I could have argued, demanded an explanation, or begged them to reconsider. Instead, I felt an odd calm settle in like a storm passing. I set my fork down, stood, and looked at each of them. My parents' smugness, Mara's amusement, Jason's indifference, and Carl's quiet flickering unease. All right, I said simply. Enjoy your trip. I walked away, their murmurs fading behind me. An hour later, I stood at the port in St. Thomas, bags at my feet, watching the ship shrink against the horizon. The ferry horn blared, and I boarded, finding a seat by the rail. The ocean stretched out, vast and indifferent, mirroring the emptiness I felt. Not sadness, not even anger, just a clean break. I'd given them everything, and they'd spat it back in my face. As the mainland drew closer, my phone buzzed. A text from Uncle Carl, they'll regret this. Trust me. I stared at it, a faint smirk tugging at my lips. I didn't know what he meant, but something told me the cruise wasn't over for them yet. Not by a long shot. I landed back in Miami late that afternoon. The ferry ride a blur of salt spray and quiet reflection. I'd expected to feel humiliated, cast off like a nuisance, but instead, a strange relief pulsed through me. The condo I rented felt like a sanctuary. No snide comments, no entitled demands, just silence. I tossed my bags by the door and sank into the couch replaying Uncle Carl's text. They'll regret this. Trust me. His words lingered. A promise I couldn't quite decipher. I didn't have to wait long to find out. 2 days later, my phone pinged with a voicemail from Carl. His voice was calm, almost amused. Daniel, you should see this mess. I'm making it right. Don't you worry. Curious, I called him back, catching him mid-cruise on a spotty ship signal. What's going on? I asked. He chuckled low and conspiratorial. Let's just say they're learning what family really means. Started small. Carl had misheard Mara's request for a luxury catamaran excursion in Nassau, booking them instead on a rickety fishing boat swarming with flies. Oh, I thought you said authentic experience, he told them, blinking innocently as my parents swatted at mosquitoes and Jason gagged on the bait stench. Mara grumbled about the downgrade, but Carl just shrugged. It's cheaper. You're always saying we should save. Right? I could almost hear the smirk in his recounting. Then came the spa fiasco. My parents had raved about the ship's 5-star massage package. A treat they'd planned for days. Carl, tasked with confirming it, forgot to lock in the slots. When they showed up, the spa was booked solid. He steered them to a sketchy shoreside shack instead. Peeling paint, a flickering neon sign, and a masseuse who smelled like stale cigarettes. It's more adventurous this way, Carl insisted, watching my parents storm out with towels still draped over their shoulders. Mara snapped at him, this is ridiculous. Carl's reply was pure gold. Oh, you mean like kicking Daniel off a trip he paid for? His real masterpiece came at dinner. The family had bragged to other passengers about their tight-knit dynamic, conveniently leaving out my exile. Carl waited until they were mid-story, my parents spinning a tale about ungrateful people, before cutting in loud and clear, you mean like Daniel? The one who covered most of this cruise before you sent him packing. Heads turned, forks paused midair. Mara's face reddened. Jason sputtered into his wine and my parents hissed, Carl, not here. But Carl just smiled, sipping his water. Just keeping it honest. By day 5, the family was unraveling. Carl's accidental overbooking of a shore tour left them crammed into a sweaty van with broken AC while he opted for a solo walk and sipped iced coffee in the shade. He texted me a photo of them squabbling by the dock, Mara gesturing wildly, my parents fanning themselves with a crumpled map. They're miserable, he wrote. Karma's got a front row seat. I leaned back, grinning at the image. I hadn't asked Carl to do this, hadn't even hinted at revenge, but he'd seen the betrayal clearer than I had. His quiet chaos was a gift, turning their paradise into a petty hell. I typed back, "You're a legend." His reply was instant, "Not done yet." The cruise still had 2 days left, and I knew Carl wasn't bluffing. Whatever he had up his sleeve next, I was content to sit back and let it unfold, far from the ship but closer to freedom than ever. I spent the next day piecing my routine back together. Work emails, a gym session, a quiet dinner alone. Carl's updates had turned the cruise into a distant, darkly funny sideshow, but I wasn't prepared for the next twist. Late that evening, my phone lit up with my parents' names. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won out. "Daniel," they said, their voices tight with urgency. "Mara twisted her ankle on a shore trail. The ship's clinic wants $1,000 upfront for treatment. We need you to wire it now." They paused, then added, "Family helps family. Right?" My gut twisted. The plea sounded rehearsed, their tone too polished for panic. "How'd it happen?" I asked, stalling. "Slipped on some rocks," they snapped impatiently. "Just send the money, Daniel. We're stuck here." I hesitated, promising to call back, then dug into the ship's online passenger portal, a perk of my initial booking. A quick chat with a staffer confirmed it, no medical visits logged for Mara. It was a lie. They'd cooked up a sob story to squeeze more cash out of me, probably to fuel their dwindling onboard spree. Fury flared hot in my chest. They'd banished me, and now this? The next blow landed the following morning. An email from the cruise line hit my inbox. A $2,400 charge notification. Puzzled, I called customer service, my pulse quickening as the rep explained. Before I disembarked, Mara had sweet-talked the front desk into upgrading her and Jason's cabin to a sprawling oceanfront suite, complete with a private hot tub and butler service, using my linked credit card. They said it was a family adjustment, the rep said, apologetic. "We assumed you approved." My laugh was bitter. Mara and Jason had lounged in luxury, toasting their victory over me while I'd been on a cramped ferry home. The receipt showed they'd moved in the day I left, sipping champagne I'd unknowingly paid for. I stared at the phone, the betrayal sinking deeper. This wasn't just greed. It was calculated. They'd planned to bleed me dry even after cutting me loose. I imagined Mara's smug grin, Jason's dismissive giggle, my parents' sanctimonious nod, all while Carl's quiet war chipped away at their facade. The cabin scam alone was a gut punch, but the fake emergency layered on a venomous edge. They hadn't just discarded me. They'd turned me into their personal piggy bank, laughing behind my back. I fired off a text to Carl. They faked Mara's injury for $1,000 and charged me $2,400 for a suite upgrade. Unreal. His reply came fast, "Bastards. I've got this." I didn't doubt him, but the audacity gnawed at me. I paced my condo, replaying every moment. My parents' crocodile tears, Mara's entitlement, Jason's sneers. I'd given them a dream trip, and they'd repaid me with deceit. The money stung, sure, but the malice behind it cut deeper. By nightfall, I'd cooled enough to strategize. I could dispute the charges, maybe even press fraud, but Carl's promise held me back. He was still on board, a wild card in flip-flops, and his last text echoed in my mind, "Not done yet." Whatever he was cooking up, it hit them where it hurt harder than they'd hit me. I poured a beer, settled onto my balcony, and stared at the city lights. The cruise was their battlefield now, and I trusted Carl to turn it into their reckoning. For the first time in days, I felt the scales tipping my way. The cruise's final day dawned bright over Miami. But for my parents, Mara, and Jason, the return was a descent into chaos. I woke to a flurry of texts from Carl, his play-by-play unfolding like a revenge novel. He'd saved his best for last. As the ship docked, the family shuffled to baggage claim, bleary-eyed from his relentless sabotage. Crowded vans, botched spa days, public call-outs. But Carl had one more card to play. He'd misfiled their luggage tags during a shore stop, rerouting their suitcases to a port in the Bahamas. They stood empty-handed, clutching only carry-ons as a harried staffer shrugged. "It'll take days to retrieve them," he said. My parents' faces crumpled. Mara swore under her breath. Then came the real kicker. At the terminal, my parents reached for their purses to call a cab. Nothing. Mara patted her pockets, empty. Jason dumped his bag on a bench, makeup and receipts spilling out, but no wallet. Somewhere in the chaos of a crowded Nassau market where Carl had wandered off during our last outing, they'd been pickpocketed. Cash, cards, IDs gone. I got the full scoop from Carl's gleeful call as he sipped coffee in the shuttle line. "They're stranded, kid. No money, no way home." Guess who they called? My phone buzzed minutes later. My parents' voices cracked through the static. "Daniel, we're in trouble. Lost everything, wallets, passports. You've got to drive down here, please." Mara cut in, gruff and desperate. 3 hours, man. You owe us this after bailing on the trip." I let the irony hang. Their entitlement as thick as ever. Jason's whine pierced the background. Do it, Daniel. I pictured them, sweaty, disheveled, glaring at each other in the terminal, and felt a slow satisfying burn. You're not welcome here, I said. My tone ice cold, echoing my parents' dismissal from that breakfast table. My parents gasped. Daniel, this isn't a game. I hung up, the line going dead before Mara could bark another demand. They turned to Carl next, but he was already gone. Shuttle rolling toward his hotel, first-class ticket home booked on his own dime. He texted me a selfie, grinning with a mimosa, left them to stew. Enjoy the silence. I did. My condo hummed with calm. The city skyline glinting beyond my window. They'd spent a week leeching off me. 60% of the cruise, a sweet upgrade, a fake sob story, and now they were reaping the fallout. Carl's chaos had stripped their veneer, exposing them to the strangers they bragged to onboard. I imagined my parents' frantic calls to the bank, Mara's pacing, Jason's sulking. No funds, no IDs, just each other to blame. They'd expected me to swoop in, the dutiful son and brother, but I was done being their safety net. Later, I checked my phone. No follow-ups, no groveling voicemails. They'd found a way to squirm out. Maybe a loan from a pitying tourist or a begrudging call to a distant cousin. I didn't care. The silence was my victory. Their desperation, my reward. Carl's final text sealed it. Karma's a hell of a cruise director, I laughed, pouring a coffee as the sun dipped low. The trip I'd bankrolled had become their prison, and I was free, 3 hours away, untouchable. Whatever came next, they'd face it without me. For once, the scales felt balanced, and I savored every second of it. I thought the cruise debacle was behind me, a closed chapter of petty revenge and hard-earned distance. Then, 3 days after the family's Miami stranding, my phone pinged with an email from the cruise line. Subject, updated invoice, urgent. My stomach dropped as I opened it. $5,800 in new charges tied to my credit card. A breakdown followed, $2,400 for Mara and Jason's suite upgrade, $1,000 for medical services that never happened, and $2,400 more in spa treatments, premium dinners, and casino credits, all racked up after I'd left the ship. They'd kept my card on file and milked it dry, a final middle finger from paradise. I called the cruise line, voice tight with disbelief. The rep confirmed it. Your party authorized continued use of the linked payment method post-disembarkation. My laugh was hollow. I didn't authorize anything. I was kicked off. The rep stammered an apology, but the damage was done. I hung up, fury surging. They'd planned this. My parents' fake emergency, Mara's upgrade scam, all while Carl turned their trip into a circus. It wasn't enough to exile me. They'd looted my wallet on the way out. I texted Carl. They charged $5,800 to my card after I left. Fraud. His reply was instant, those leeches. Hit them hard. I weighed my options, dispute the charges, file a report, let it go. The money stung, but the betrayal burned hotter. I dialed my parents, skipping pleasantries when they picked up. You put $5,800 on my card. Explain. Their voices turned syrupy. Bad actors caught mid-scene. Oh, Daniel. That must be a mix-up. You left so fast. We figured you'd cover the rest. Family account, you know? Bullshit, I snapped. You stole from me. Wire it back by morning or I'm reporting fraud. My parents gasped, theatrical and shrill. You'd sue your own parents over a little mistake. I gritted my teeth. It's not a mistake. It's theft. Fix it. They huffed. You're overreacting. You've got the cash. What's the big deal? That was it, the last straw. By 8 a.m. or I call the bank, I said, voice flat, and hung up. I barely slept, adrenaline buzzing. At 7:58 a.m., my account pinged. $5,800 deposited. No note. No apology. Just cold, begrudging compliance. I checked anyway, confirming it cleared, then blocked my parents' numbers. Mara's followed, already silent since the terminal plea. Jason's social media lit up hours later. A vague post about toxic people and learning who's real. I snorted. The irony was rich. Carl called that afternoon, cackling when I filled him in. They thought they'd outsmart you. Priceless. I managed a grin. They almost did. He hummed, satisfied. Not with me around. We met for beers that weekend, clinking bottles on his patio. To cutting the cord, he toasted, eyes twinkling. To cutting the cord, I echoed, the weightlifting. The money was back. The ties severed. My parents' victim act, Mara's bravado, Jason's whining, all irrelevant now. I'd paid for their cruise, but they'd paid in pride. It was over, and I was lighter for it. Weeks passed and I settled into a rhythm. Work, workouts, nights with no drama. The cruise felt like a fading nightmare, its sting dulled by Carl's antics and my clean break. Then an email jolted me awake one morning from Riverfront Apartments. Subject: urgent. Tenant payment issue. It was my parents' landlord, a name I vaguely recognized from years past. Hello, Daniel, it read, you're listed as the financial contact for your parents and Mara's lease. They're 4 months behind, $5,600 owed. Eviction looms. Please call. I stared incredulous, then laughed. A sharp, disbelieving bark. They'd done it again. I dialed the landlord, a gruff person named Pete who picked up fast. Daniel, good to hear from you. Your folks said you'd cover the rent. True? My voice was steel. No. They lied. I'm not their guarantor, Pete sighed, papers rustling. They swore you'd step in. Gave me your email, said your family. I cut in. Not my problem. They're on their own. Pete hesitated. So no help. They're out next week without payment. I leaned back, the absurdity almost amusing. Correct. Start the eviction. Pete muttered, families, and hung up. I didn't call my parents or Mara. Didn't need to. I could picture it. My parents' frantic packing, Mara's cursing, Jason's complaints, all while they scrambled for a lifeline I wouldn't throw. They pinned their last hope on me, banking on guilt or duty, but I was done playing savior. I texted Carl, they listed me as rent backup. Facing eviction. Told the landlord no. His reply was a string of laughing emojis. Perfect. Let them sink. I grinned, imagining their panic. 4 months behind, no cash after the cruise drained them, and now no home. I didn't check on them, didn't care where they landed. They built this mess from the ship to the shore to this. That night, I met Carl at a diner, his eyes gleaming over coffee. They thought you'd cave, he said. Not this time, I replied, clinking his mug. To new beginnings. He nodded. To new beginnings. The landlord's call was their final gambit, and I'd called their bluff. Eviction loomed for them, but for me, it was freedom. Complete, unshakable, and mine alone.